All right.
Okie doke. Here we go.
So we are back. We are back. This will be episode number two. And we are going to
Mm.
jump into which I didn't know how essential this part was, but we're going to talk about estrogen. Because I
Oh
think,
boy.
like everyone else, I thought estrogen was the enemy of testosterone. So I figured, when you jump on testosterone replacement therapy, you want to crush your estrogen and jack your testosterone, right? Because women have
That
estrogen, men have testosterone, and that is the absolute worst way to think. So,
yes.
how about we
Yes.
jump into the importance of estrogen?
Oh boy. So um as you were saying, estrogen has had this nefarious rap for years. And I think we didn't understand it very well. And when I say we, I'm referring to like the greater medical community.
Right.
Okay. And I think it gets its association kind of negatively in a way, and we do think of it as a woman hormone, specifically when thinking it from like a testosterone side, right? But it is very much a man hormone as much as it is a woman hormone as well. As we are finding out and have found out through the years that estrogen has many roles in a man's body. It's responsible for libido. It's responsible for vision. It's responsible for bone density in male and women, right? Um, it's responsible somewhat for erectile function via libido. It's responsible for, um, if I didn't say vision, I might have
Okay.
said that twice.
Yeah.
I'm trying to go back on myself here, but um, it helps with insulin and it helps with your heart kind of indirectly. But there's a lot of positive processes that are estrogen related that we need if we want to live our best life, so to speak. Okay.
Right.
Um, the the way estrogen I think was viewed is, well, it's it comes from the bodybuilding realm. I think is well, estrogen causes me to retain water, which that's mostly testosterone's fault, and probably somewhat aldosterone's fault too. Um, and it gave me gyno.
Right. Right.
So
That's
there's the bad rap,
right.
and that's because testosterone is a performance enhancer, right? We're going to have that protein synthesis like we talked about last time, and we don't want estrogen. We want all testosterone, no estrogen. But I think the tides are changing on that. At least I
Yeah.
hope they are.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, just from the layman, like someone like me, I thought that, obviously testosterone is what we're looking to do. We're boosting testosterone. You would crush your estrogen, boost your testosterone, you would be more of a man. Um, so the clinic that I went to in the beginning immediately put me on an aromatase inhibitor because obviously you want to keep your estrogen in check or low. Um, and I definitely experienced ED, which I didn't know. I thought it was from testosterone. They said it was from the testosterone.
Right.
Um, and after, now I didn't experience it right from the beginning, but it was sometime into it that I experienced it. When I stopped taking it, that went away.
Yep.
Um, and also, I would say about a month after I took it or stopped taking it, um, I felt like the testosterone was working better.
Yeah.
I felt better myself. Like I was like, I started to feel like, wait, you know what? I think this is what it's supposed to feel like, and the clinic fought me, and it ended up being working out because I ended up, we ended up meeting, and ended up going with you. But um, I didn't realize how essential. I think that for me personally, it affected my, work in the bed.
Sure.
It definitely affected my gym at the gym, hands down. Because a month after when I started to feel better, it was like a light switch at the gym. Now, when I
Yeah.
first went on TRT, I had energy. So when I
Right.
went to the gym, I was like excited about going to the gym. When I stopped the aromatase inhibitor, it wasn't like an excitement, more it was like I'm gonna crush the gym today. It was
Yeah.
like a challenge every day. And then it was like I was just putting weights on. And then it was like, and then it became like while I was doing 4 sets, I needed to do five. And then I was like, you know what? I need to put more weight on. And um, like I think I started to develop more muscle um, like quicker. You know what I mean? Like I could tell that it was working. Like so by month 6 and 7, I could see that there was results that were coming. Uh,
And that's probably due to one thing I left out, and I can't believe I left it out because it's probably one of the biggest features of estrogen, and that is growth hormone secretion is estrogen mediated. Okay. From the pituitary. And then your downstream hormone from a growth hormone, which would be IGF-1, which is anabolic, which is going to help you build muscle mass, which is why bodybuilders use, HGH, for example. You need estrogen to secrete growth hormone.
right,
And and growth hormone is going to help you lose fat, and it's going to help you downstream via IGF-1 build muscle. So, these guys that are on AIs are only hurting themselves because of that, blocking the estrogen creation.
right. Yeah, I mean, so I guess the question is because everyone talks about the gyno, the side effects, the crying, all this stuff that comes with it. I personally haven't experienced. Now, I have a little bit more emotion? Yeah, I mean, I do, and I can tell. Um,
That's not necessarily a side effect. That's an intended effect of estrogen. That'd be like taking testosterone and be like, I gain muscle.
right, right.
I don't want to gain muscle. It's like that's kind of the purpose of that hormone. That's one of the things that it does. It's not a side effect. It's a result of.
Right.
It's supposed to do that. It's not
Yeah.
permanent, right? You might be emotional here and there, but it's not like you're going to be crying at everything that comes along for the next 3 months.
Right.
Like
Yeah.
it's relative to, having that hormone present. So it's not a side effect. And then, then you treat it, let's say with an AI, and you just crush your estrogen, and now you have nothing being created for up to 2 weeks.
Right.
If you take an anastrozole, I think an anastrozole has a half life of 2 days roughly. It's going to take 5 half lives to fully get rid of that out of your body. Okay.
Jeez.
So, I mean, while estrogen production will ramp up, certainly within that 10-day period, but it's going to take a while. So you could theoretically take 2 doses of an anastrozole 2 weeks apart and crush your estrogen for a whole month. Because as soon as you get it back up to like where it was, if you take another pill, it's right to the other end.
Right. So why? Well, you know what? Let's start with this because everyone's going to say, "What about gyno?" I mean, that's the number one thing is everyone's like, "I
Yeah.
don't want to get gyno."
Gyno is, I think, very misunderstood. And I am actually in process of doing my own video on gyno with some visual aids because I think that's what people need to fully kind of understand it. Okay. You need four hormones present to form breast tissue, the true gyno, not fat, like actual ductal breast tissue.
Right.
Okay. You need estrogen or E2 estradiol. You need IGF-1, okay, which is an estradiol mediated process. Okay. You need prolactin and you need progesterone. Okay. Men hardly make progesterone for squat. Like we have like no progesterone periods. We don't need it at all. We hardly
Right.
make it at all. So, um, but those four hormones must be present to form this tissue. The other thing is those four hormones must go unopposed from their counter inhibitory hormone, which just so happens to be testosterone.
Right.
So when guys are like, I got gyno from testosterone, you don't get gyno from testosterone. Testosterone blocks those hormones from having that action. Now, let's say you were castrated, right? If I had a guy with metastatic prostate cancer and we gave him a hormone blocker to stop his brain from producing anything to signal the testes, and there we basically chemically castrate him, right? That guy could form gyno. He could have estrogen, IGF-1, prolactin, and progesterone in higher values than the testosterone that's there, and therefore it could develop breast tissue. And we have seen that happen in some guys with metastatic prostate cancer. Now,
Right.
typically they're a little overweight, so they're going to have a little bit more adipose tissue, which also aromatizes testosterone um, to estrogen. So it will lower their T. It'll suck up kind of what they have and eat up their T. That's why, it's not uncommon to see somebody that's really big that has a lot of fat have a low testosterone value. And that's because all their adipose tissue is sucking up all of their testosterone, turning it to estrogen.
Yeah.
That in and of itself too is a scenario where somebody could form some breast tissue because their testosterone is ultimately low. Okay.
Yeah.
And it's being aromatized to estrogen. Okay.
Yeah. So when people say, so let's take the bodybuilders, right?
Yeah.
That's a common thing about body, the estrogen, gyno. So so did these guys have gyno before? Is that and then
I think it's hard to say because you have to understand bodybuilders probably have some degree of body dysmorphia to begin with to get down that road, right?
yeah,
So like any small changes, they're probably going to blame it on something. Um, Gyno typically happens in two life phases. It either happens as when you're a neonate or it happens in prepubertal phase of life. Why? Because those are two phases where those four hormones that I mentioned go virtually unopposed from testosterone,
right,
right? And you can form that tissue in that. In the case of, let's say, TRT or testosterone, right? What I've tend to notice is that guys that were maybe husky as a child and they go on testosterone, or maybe they run a steroid cycle like in their 20s or something, right? And they start to lift weights, put on muscle. As they lean out and they lose the body fat and they put on more muscle,
hmm,
what happens is the tissue that was there becomes more noticeable, right?
okay,
Because it was kind of hidden behind the
right,
layer of everything they had on. It starts to reveal itself. And they're like, well, geez, I got this from X, Y, and Z. No, you didn't. You had it already. You just kind of revealed that it was there, right? And if it's true ductal tissue, if it's true glandular tissue, the only way to get rid of it is to have it removed. If it's fat, you can work it off, right? But if it's true breast tissue, you actually have to have the surgery to have it removed. So,
yeah,
but it happened in a different life phase. You cannot give a guy testosterone replacement therapy and be like, hey, you're gonna get boobs. It's just not gonna happen. I have a guy, he's 360 pounds, he's very obese, he's has secondary hypogonadism because his fat just eats up everything, and his brain's kind of under functioning, and kids aren't really on the table for him anymore. He's in his early 40s, probably has actually some degree of primary as well, and you know this is like the perfect guy. He's got metabolic syndrome. He is like the perfect candidate for TRT. He needs it
yeah,
because but is he gonna get boobs? I mean, he already has them. Like, you know what
right,
I mean? They're there already.
right,
Is he going to give it? Are they going to get more because I'm giving him testosterone? No, that's going to stop the breast growth that he has, because now I'm going to give him adequate testosterone. And even sure, he'll aromatize some of that testosterone to estrogen more so than like somebody with less body fat. But his levels of testosterone will be high enough to be inhibitory at that point, right? They're
yeah,
not going to be 100. They're going to be, 800,
right,
which will
right,
stop any of that process from happening. So that's kind of, I think, the misnomer here is like that guy already got it from whenever he was just not doing anything. He's not going to get anything more from testosterone.
yeah,
And I also want to echo this too, because this is kind of going to be part of the lecture. There was a study done, I want to say it was 2022. I have it. I don't have it in front of me, but I have it in my notes to go over for when I do that video on gyno with the visual aids. But it was a study on male to female transition on breast growth size
right,
over a 12-month period. And I want to say the study was done with about 260 odd male to female transition.
right,
Now, these particular individuals would have been given a GnRH agonist or antagonist, which would stop the brain from producing any gonadotropins and then therefore castrate them. So no testosterone production. So
okay,
these people are going to be castrated, and then they were also given estrogen and progesterone as the female hormones go, right? They're trying to transition to be women.
Right,
Okay.
right,
So we've created this perfect storm of breast growth, right? We're going to have all the other hormones, roughly, maybe minus prolactin to a degree, but we're going to have estrogen. And since we have estrogen, we're going to have somewhat of IGF-1. We're going to have progesterone because they're taking it. And of those 260 some participants, only 3.6% of those participants grew breast tissue up to an A cup.
that's
So
it.
think about that. That's it. Okay. So it's not even like under like perfect conditions that anybody's going to grow breast tissue.
Right.
Okay. Um, and of which that breast tissue growth was all done in the first, most of it was in the first 6 months, and almost no growth after that on almost all the participants. So I actually have to get the study up, and I might be off on slightly on some of the data because I'm trying to paraphrase from my memory,
Yeah.
but you know, that is, the gist of it right there. So I think, at least from a TRT perspective, it's a bodybuilding thing that kind of bled over. But even from a bodybuilding thing, if those guys are taking adequate testosterone, they are not getting gynecomastia from
Right.
testosterone. It's just not happening.
So then I guess the next thing I guess we would bring up, because if people are talking about gyno and excess estrogen, where does the excess estrogen go?
You have to understand, and I think this is really hard for some people to understand. This is kind of the one thing we do go over in our consults, and that's to understand kind of a saturation model, which is also in dealing with testosterone and prostate cancer. You Testosterone is an endocrine hormone, right? It's made by your testes and to a lesser extent by your adrenal gland. So about 3% of your testosterone comes from your adrenals. That's how women make testosterone, right?
Right.
Men get it 97-ish% from their testes. Okay. Testosterone is meant to be systemic. It's meant to go everywhere. One, it has to act on androgen receptors. Two, it needs to get turned into other things, notably estradiol and DHT.
Right.
Okay, via 5-alpha reductase. And so testosterone wears many hats, okay, so to speak. Estrogen is not an endocrine hormone. We do not have ovaries. We only have testes. So how do we get it? It comes from testosterone. Well, then where is it made? Very specific places. We call that tissue specific, okay?
Okay.
Bone, pituitary gland, liver, prostate, testes. These are places that aromatization occurs, where testosterone gets converted into estrogen. Okay. Therefore, estrogen receptors, you have two types, alpha and beta,
Hmm.
exist only at certain places. They don't exist like androgen receptors that are everywhere. Okay. The estrogen receptors are only at target places in your body where estrogen is needed. Okay. So it's a very focused hormone. We call estrogen an intracrine and paracrine hormone. Intracrine means inside the cell, paracrine roughly means around the outside of said tissue. Okay. So let's take an area that aromatizes. Let's take your pituitary gland, because we were talking about that already.
Right.
Okay. And if we were to look at the pituitary gland, we're going to see that it has estrogen alpha receptors there. And what happens is testosterone will enter those cells, because remember, it's systemic, it goes everywhere. It enters those cells, specifically the endoplasmic reticulum, where it goes in and it's converted to estrogen and emerges. Outside of that, a portion of that emerges as estrogen. It's going to look for a receptor in that area inside the cell, which there should be one there because it's an intracrine hormone at that point. That's how it gets
Sure.
converted. Okay. And if there's one available, it's going to take it. Now, there's more than one receptor inside the cell, right? But there's still a finite amount of estrogen receptors, meaning you only have a certain amount. Okay. So what's going to happen is estrogen is going to take the receptor spot if it's available. Here's the thing: your aromatization is a continuous process, right? Like it doesn't just send in like one molecule of testosterone and then it's like, okay, we're done. Like it's a continuous process, right? It's happening all the time, right?
Right.
So if I increase your testosterone by giving you more testosterone, you're going to have more testosterone that's going around everywhere,
Right.
all
Right.
these places, right? So you're getting all this testosterone to enter these cells, okay? And it's a portion of that's going to get converted to estrogen. So we're just going to make more estrogen because more testosterone is getting there,
Right.
right?
Okay.
So what happens? It gets converted to estrogen, it then will bind to the receptor. And if there's another estrogen molecule there and another receptor, it'll take it. Now, if those receptors are full, that estrogen has nowhere to go. There's nowhere for it to bind. So what does it do? It leaves the cell, it exits. Okay. And now it's outside of the cell. Now it's a paracrine hormone, right? And it's going to cruise around that general area and it's going to look for a receptor on the outside of the cell or in that localized tissue because it needs to exert its effect on those receptors there. So it's going to take it. Okay. And as we have more estrogen, right, as the inside saturates, now so the outside will start to saturate too. So it'll start to take receptor. Again, only a finite amount of receptors. These aren't infinite. Okay.
Right. Okay.
It does use the estrogen, so it will need a replacement at some point, but that's fine. And that happens at different rates, depending on the receptor and where it's at in the body and the whole 9 yards. But you have estrogen there to do it. So then what happens if there's excess in that general area? It goes to the serum, right? And what do we measure when we measure an estradiol level? A serum estradiol level. Why did it go there? It's excess. You don't need it. It's waste. Okay. So we look at a waste estrogen level. Here's the other thing. Estrogen can only exert its effects once it's bound to the receptor. So why are we like measuring a waste estrogen level of unbound estrogen and using it as sort of as a metric of being like, well, your estrogen's too high.
Right.
Right.
So when they check your estradiol, that's the waste. That's what's just floating around. Is that
it's excess estrogen that your body is not using at the level of what it's needed? Because remember, this is a very tissue specific hormone. It's not meant to be systemic. So if I'm drawing a systemic test, aka serum, right, it's reflective of excess waste estrogen on the way out to be eliminated, excreted by the kidneys, essentially.
Okay.
Okay. So, and what I mean by that is if it's in the serum, it's not doing anything. It's just hanging out, right? If I want estrogen to do something like, let's say, work in the pituitary, it has to be on those receptors to elicit its effect. If it's not bound to a receptor, it's inert.
Okay.
Right? It's just kind of hanging out doing its thing. So when we look at this value, what happens then is they're going to be like, oh, your estrogen came back high. It's 80 or 90 or whatever, or 60 or whatever they want to call it, right? And they're going to give you an aromatase inhibitor, right? What does that do? An aromatase inhibitor will stop that the whole aromatization process from happening at all. Okay. Meaning now the testosterone goes into the cell and it just leaves as testosterone. It doesn't get converted to estrogen. So then what happens to those receptors that needed the estrogen? Well, they use it, but there's no replacement.
Right.
Okay. So the receptor uses the estrogen and now there's to be a replacement and it's nowhere to be found. Day shift's waiting for night shift to come in. Night shift doesn't show up.
Right.
Right. Because you took the AI. So what happens then? Well, we basically just turned you into a postmenopausal woman. You want to know how it feels? Ask a postmenopausal woman. They'll tell you. And they tell you it sucks. They hate it. Right. You're going to gain weight. You're going to get moody. You're going to get erectile dysfunction. That's the big one.
Right.
Right. These are things that happen when that happens because they don't understand the point of having a serum estradiol level. Right. And they're looking at it and a lot of people are going and they're not even saying like, how do you feel? They're just going, oh, it's 80 here. Take this.
Right. Just off the paper.
Right. Or if you're like, how do you feel? And they're like, well, I gained weight. They didn't gain weight from the estrogen. They gained weight from testosterone, potentially building muscle. You're going to hold more water from that anyway. And probably aldosterone stimulation as well, which happens when you first start an androgen.
Right. Okay.
So because you're going to retain sodium and fluid because of that reason. So these are things that I think get overlooked and they blame it on estrogen, but it has nothing to do with it. It's and what we're going to do then is completely ruin everything else for you at the sake of, not understanding why we need it in the first place.
Right. So is there ever a time when an aromatase inhibitor you would feel that is needed? Is there ever a scenario? There is no. There's not.
There's not, because like, let's say you have breast tenderness, okay, or something that can develop that we consider an estrogen side, so to speak. Okay. It generally means your protocol is wrong, right? So we can just adjust your protocol and do that. And then also kind of putting these into perspective as well. Sometimes prolactin can be a problem, right? and it's not an estrogen problem, it's a prolactin problem.
Okay.
And we can manage prolactin. We don't want it to be too high, notably because it can cause some issues with penile sensitivity.
Hmm.
Okay. And prolactin, like it says, lactate, lactin, okay, is responsible for milk ducts. So that's what, breast milk and everything. So could you have some breast tenderness if prolactin got a little bit too high? Sure. Yeah. But it doesn't necessarily mean it's estrogen's fault. Right.
Right. Okay.
So
And
that's the,
then what about like, so if is that the same, does it hold true the same what we just talked about for guys that use excessive amounts of testosterone, like outside of TRT? You're talking like, you know,
they
5 and
shouldn't have to
600 mgs.
manage their estrogen at all either. I think it's
Okay.
just a
So
big
it's
misunderstanding there.
just
Now
all the
they may
same.
have to, because if they're using other synthetic androgens, have to look at prolactin in addition to
Right.
estrogen. Okay. So then
Okay.
they may have to do that, but they do not have to worry about estrogen. I think like it's got this nefarious appeal, and
Sure.
it
No,
and it
it
really just doesn't matter. It doesn't matter
100%.
at all. Just leave it alone. Even
Yeah.
at 500 milligrams a week, leave it alone.
Yeah.
You know,
Okay. So I mean, because that's what everyone. This is the biggest misconception out there. People with the aromatase inhibitors, and then the gyno, and then and the funny thing is that when I talk to guys, when they say something about it, I say, well, do you have gyno? And they say, well, no, I don't want to
right,
get it. And I'm like,
right, because
well,
it's the fear of developing, and we just discussed that you cannot get it from
right.
testosterone. It is impossible.
Right. And then the
So
tenderness, though, I know guys that say that, but then that goes away.
it does. It's temporary. And
Okay.
that's because remember, if you have a guy that's hypogonadal, right? And when I mean like he's got a low testosterone, let's say it's like 250 or 200, right? He also doesn't have estrogen, right? He's just not going to have a lot of it. He doesn't have a lot of testosterone. And let's say he's not obese, right? Not super big. Let's just say
Because,
he's kind of, I don't know, maybe slightly overweight, BMI 28 to 30, right?
right.
Somewhere in that range. Okay. And he has that. It's not going to be an issue for him at all.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Yeah. It's crazy that estrogen does get a bad rap. I mean, there's no question about it. Still to this day, I mean, no matter what, there will be people that you look on their thing, they're either training to be bodybuilders or whatever, that when I post something, they will jump right in there and be like, it's different for everyone. Some
yeah,
guys need it, some guys don't. So I'm like, so I didn't know if guys that were using excessive amounts, maybe it's different because TRT amounts, you shouldn't, you shouldn't need it. I
I
mean,
mean, we should ask ourselves this too. Like, so DHT, for example, is another endocrine paracrine hormone. We don't measure DHT hardly at all. Why? Right?
right,
Why do we not measure DHT? Because if
right,
I measure DHT, it's going to be roughly it's produced the same way estrogen is,
right,
right? But we don't ever hear about I got DHT sides
right, right,
or this, that, and the other. DHT seems to be fine, but
right.
estrogen, no, it's not fine.
Yeah. So when there is guys that run like that, when you see their estrogen levels are, I think like in the 50s is where people say they want their estrogen to be. Like, and it's anything above 50. Because I remember when the first time I got blood work at that first clinic, it was 54. And they were like, whoa, whoa,
Yeah.
you're gonna, and then they immediately put me on, well, they put me on aromatase inhibitor right from the beginning.
And
But
there's no scientific basis for that whole like 10-to-1 ratio crap. That's the biggest load of bull I've ever seen.
yeah,
Like it just doesn't exist.
right. Right. Yeah, that is a common thing that people will say that it should be
Yeah.
10 to 1.
Yeah. And it doesn't exist.
And then what that you think that's a bodybuilding
I don't know where it came from, but it's stupid.
came from somebody who makes aromatase inhibitors.
Something. Yeah. They want to sell more of them. They
Right.
want everybody to be on one. Right.
Sure.
Let's give you a drug used to treat breast cancer,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
to lower your estrogen.
Yeah. Yeah, I think me personally, that was the biggest learning curve of being on TRT was I mean the testosterone is what it is. I mean, like you
Right.
want more of it, you get more of it. Okay. The estrogen part of it was really like the whole like I didn't realize that I needed as much estrogen as I do.
A lot of
You
guys
just
don't.
think that it's a female hormone and I don't need it.
I'll also throw this out too. So I have hundreds of guys, not hundreds. I have, a good amount of guys in our clinic. Not one of them are on an AI. Do you know how many complaints I get of estrogen? Zero,
Zero. Right.
zero, none.
Yeah.
Right. So if I did a study on that, and I know other clinics that have thousands of patients, okay, and none of them are on AIs. And you know
Right.
how many guys there have problems? Zero.
Right.
So if estrogen was such a problem, why are the clinics that aren't treating it not having problems?
Right.
Do you know what I
Exactly.
mean? Like
Exactly.
wouldn't it be a problem when I
Yes.
have patients calling me being like, my estrogen's this, that, or the other, or I did some research or this, that. We don't have it
Yeah.
because we educate them properly before we start TRT, and they go, okay, yeah. And then they don't have problems because now they know that, having an emotional day here and there is fine.
Sure.
It
So,
doesn't mean to ruin your estrogen.
right. So if guys are taking an aromatase inhibitor now,
Yeah.
you just tell them that stop. Like that's
Throw it away. It's
stop.
garbage.
Okay.
You do not need it. You're probably going to hate life for the next 6 to 8 weeks. It's going to suck as you start to re-estrogenize everything. I just went through this with 2 clients in our clinic, but they're finally starting to bounce back, and they're like bouncing back real good.
Right.
The one guy I run into at the gym, um, I ran into him, and he actually had messaged me because we had changed his protocol from where he came, and he uh, he texted me and was like, I would say about a week to 2 weeks after we changed his protocol, because he came and he was on a Nastrozone. I'm like, you got to get rid of that stuff immediately. You don't need
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
And he did. And he texted me and he's like, I feel awful. I have no desire to go to the gym. And he kind of had that feeling of like where you said that you you went to the gym, like he had to drag himself there.
Right.
Right. And this guy's in great shape. Like he really is.
Yeah.
And he had to drag himself there. And I was like, just give it time. Trust the process. Give it time.
Right. Right.
And I ran into him in the gym last week. He's getting ready to have his follow-up appointment with us. And I'm like, how you feeling? He's like, dude, I feel great now.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, I mean, it had to work its way out. We had to get
Yep.
him to make more estrogen. We had to get those receptors saturated.
Yeah.
And now he's, and this guy doesn't have any estrogen side effects,
Right.
period. None.
Yeah.
Right.
I
It's
mean,
not an issue.
when I stopped the ED, now it wasn't right away, but it was within a few weeks, the ED went away. And it was probably a month to 6 weeks when I noticed something at the gym. Something was different, you know what I mean?
Yep.
And then from that point on, it seemed like I started to feel like I think this is what TRT is supposed to feel like. It
Yeah.
was like I felt like it was like I had energy. When I woke up, I was like going through like what I was going to do today, and it was like when I go to the gym, I'm going to blast my arms. Like I'm just going to blast these things, you know? And
I
it was
mean, it's
like,
it's estimated that 50% of your benefits from TRT are estrogen,
right.
right? So we lose so much by blocking it,
Yeah.
and why would you? And it's
Right.
it's kind of like an old wives' tale that we have to just kind of
Yeah.
hopefully dispel over time.
Yeah.
But it's an
Well,
uphill battle, as you're well aware.
we are winding down in time here, Josh, but let's just cap this off with no more estrogen, or no more estrogen blockers.
No more estrogen blockers.
And then I guess no more movies that make you cry. You got to watch Rambo. You got to watch like Top Gun
You
stuff.
might cry in Rambo.
Oh no, you're gonna
Like
cry in Top Gun 2 when Goose dies. So
yeah, that's true. Yeah,
yeah,
it's got
we
to
have
be
to make a
like
list
a
of
macho.
movies that you can just watch, just
Yeah,
um, like RoboCop, stuff like that.
Crank.
Right, right, yeah, exactly.
Where it's just like the whole
Um,
time.
what's it? John Wick movies? There's like what,
Oh yeah,
6 of them
John Wick
now?
would be
Yeah,
great.
yeah.
Yeah.
Like there's 15 million bullets and none of them hit them. It's
Right.
just like
You
just
need you
man
need
movies. You can't. That's
you
what you
need
got to
movies
watch.
with low emotional attachment,
Right.
and that way if somebody does die, you're like, I didn't care about them anyway.
Yeah. Nah, that guy, he sucked.
Yeah,
So
he
it's
was
like,
terrible. I
you're
wanted him
happy
to
that he's
die.
gone. All right. Well, listen. I think this is just as important as our first episode of testosterone. This is just as important because I did not know, and I don't think a lot of guys understand the estrogen part of TRT.
Yeah, and I hope that they they listen to our podcast here, and I'm sure there's going to be a healthy degree of skepticism, right?
Sure.
And that's fine. You know, I stand behind it, and if you want me to pull some data, I'm happy to do that.
Yeah.
You know, so it's not like I'm just out here
Yeah.
flailing around just my vast
No, I mean, we'll
opinions.
we'll
You know,
we're going
we're
to
using
definitely do
science behind that.
more of these, and definitely do estrogen. We'll probably do 10 of them about estrogen.
Oh yeah, for sure. We can do a deep dive in one, and that might be a long episode that we maybe have to chop up into like
Yeah.
several pieces, right?
So be it.
Because this stuff can be a little challenging for people to
Right.
understand.
Right.
And I mean, it's easy for me to understand because that's literally what I do every day.
It's
But
why I tell people that you have to find a qualified provider.
yeah,
Like people say I can do it on my own. I'm like, man, you have to have some you have to really know this game to do this on your own and do it correctly. Like, I
yeah,
mean, yeah, can we all just get tested and injected? Sure. But can
yeah,
you decipher the blood work and why you have ED and why you know, like you there's
yeah.
all these things that go into it.
I
Like
mean,
what's your free
I
T?
could
What's
probably
your
build a
SAT?
house on my own, but
Right.
it wouldn't beat a code.
Right. So that's where I mean we everyone could think, oh, I can do it, I can do that, but I tell everyone the key is finding a provider that knows what the hell they're doing,
Yeah,
and
for
then
sure.
and it may cost more than the other place,
You
which
get
it
what you
probably
pay
will,
for,
but in
hopefully.
the long run, you are going to get maximum benefits, and you're going to thank God that you did it.
Yeah.
You know, so Virtus Men's Health, right, Josh?
Yep. As of right now, still Virtus Men's Health. We will be adjusting that to Virtus Health Optimization here, probably sometime in February. So,
It's going to
uh,
probably, when you change the name, it's going to take me a year to notice that. It's just like when we changed the year. I've
yeah,
still been writing, you know what I mean, 2024, and then it'll probably that usually goes until September, and then
yeah.
I'll get 25 down, and then a few
We'll
months
still
later.
have the Men's Health website. It'll just redirect to the new one. That's
Okay,
all.
good,
So it'll still be there. So if people still go to virtusmenshealth.com, it's still going to exist. I still have the domain. It's just going to go to the new one that's more
right,
reflective of our expanded services
perfect.
that we offer.
All right.
That's all.
Well, Josh, thank you very much. This
You're
is
welcome.
very informative. I think everyone's gonna, and we're gonna do this again for sure because the
Yeah.
estrogen issue, I think is going to pop up. I'm sure I'll get a lot of angry messages from people, but
Yeah, definitely.
we'll dive into this some more. I think we're going to call it a night
Yeah.
on everything now, and then I'll touch base with you tomorrow or something. We'll see if we can do
Sure.
something another time. We'll get the other three, and then we'll also
I
can
have
talk
off
about.
tomorrow, so I might have some time.
Oh, you're off tomorrow?
I have off every Friday.
Oh, okay. Yeah,
So
maybe we
clinic's
can do some.
closed.
I think I'm off tomorrow as well. I am
Okay.
off tomorrow. So I'll text you and then we'll see.
Yeah,
Maybe
text
we'll
me if
jump
I have
on.
some time because I got to go to the gym usually around
There you go.
1:30 ish.
Okay. That's when I go. I
Um,
go around like 1 to 2. It's perfect.
yeah, it's
Nobody's
because you
in
don't
there.
get. Yeah, exactly. That's why I go there too. I don't want all the crowd. It's usually like the same like 10 people,
It's like
you
yeah,
know,
exactly.
and
And I
they do
know
the
their
same thing.
schedule, and
They
I know that they're not doing the same. Like so, I know if I need the leg machines or anything legs, I know no one else is doing it.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, well,
Yeah.
and two, they'll respect you. Like they're not going to sit it on their phone and waste 10 minutes just
Correct.
sitting on the machine doing absolutely
Yes.
nothing. They're
Exactly.
going to get on, do their shit, move on to the
Right.
next exercise.
That's
They have a mission just like we do.
yes. Get in, get out. That's
Yep,
exactly right. All right,
exactly.
Josh. Well, thank you very much, and
All
we'll
right, brother.
talk. I'll talk to you tomorrow.
All right, man. Sounds
All right.
good. Talk to
Thanks,
you later.
bud.
See ya.
Take care.